welcome to This Week in NASCAR. Martinsville, Virginia is where the action is this weekend. That's where the championships in both the NASCAR Winston Cup Series and NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series move to, as those two divisions race on the half-mile oval on Saturday and Sunday. Tonight on the program, we will talk with a driver that's entered in both of those events this weekend. He's Kenny Irwin, driver of the Rebestos Ford in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. They're locked in a tight fight for the Cintas Rookie of the Year title, having already scored 2 wins in his first full season on that circuit. And of course, moving to the Texaco Havoline Ford for Robert Yates Racing next year. He's going to attempt to make his second NASCAR Winston Cup Series start this weekend as he continues schooling for the full-time Winston Cup ride next year after a top 10 run at Richmond 3 weeks ago. Kenny Irwin at the bottom of the hour. First, we will review the Dover event this weekend and some other recent developments with the driver of the Circuit City Ford, Hut Stricklin, who will be here with me in just a couple of minutes. Hut's team has a new crew chief in the last couple of weeks. They announced earlier this week they're changing brands of cars for next year, and they've had a good raise up in their level of performance over the last several weeks, too. We'll talk about all of that with Hut Stricklin when he joins me just a few minutes from now. We start, though, as always, with a look back at what happened on the racetrack over this past weekend. To do that, let's bring in Phil Wurz.
The NASCAR Winston Cup Series and the NASCAR Busch Series converged on the Monster Mile at Dover Downs this past weekend. And for both races, Victory Lane saw new faces break through and make history at the famed 1 mile oval. In Saturday's Busch Series race, Dick Trickle was on the pole, but his lead lasted about 3/4 of a mile as Ricky Craven forged past Trickle and the Rebestos Chevy. And Trickle's day was short-lived as the Duralube Monte Carlo bowed out early with a broken camshaft. He would finish 37th. Points leader Randy LaJoie started 16th, but by lap 69, the Phoenix Chevy was running in 5th position. 1 lap later, Jeff Fuller gets sideways, starting a multi-car pileup. And thanks to a great pit stop, LaJoie left pit road with the lead, and he also led at the halfway mark. Later, Hermie Sadler got loose down the front stretch, and his car came to a sudden stop when his car got caught by the crossover gate. The race had to be red flagged for about 45 minutes while repairs were made to the fence. With 44 laps to go, Buckshot Jones was up to second place behind LaJoie, and then later with 22 laps left, he passed by the Phoenix Chevy for the lead. It appeared Buckshot was on his way to the win, but with 15 laps remaining, the Aquafresh Pontiac gets loose in front of Joe Bessie. The pair make contact, Jones spins out, and Bessie and LaJoie get by. Joe Bessie goes on for his first Busch win, and not even some disgruntled pit crew members from Buckshot's team keep Bessie from enjoying this one.
It's been 4 long, hard years. I watched guys like Hermie and Tim Fido, who were in my freshman class. We've got a couple 10th place finishes. Today was our day.
You know, all it takes is one little tap from someone, but, you know, I can't say it's 100% Joe's fault. I've not seen the tape, so I don't want to say nothing. I mean, Joe's a good guy, he's a good racer, and, you know, heck, maybe it was both of our faults.
Meanwhile, Mark Martin was on the pole for Sunday's MBNA 400, and this race was a story of 2 cars and how fuel mileage would figure for both. Martin led 194 laps on the day, but relinquished that lead to a very strong Kyle Petty in the Hot Wheels Pontiac on lap 162. Petty also led at halfway, picking up the $10,000 bonus from Gatorade. On lap 296, Martin pitted for the final time and managed to work his way back to second place behind Petty, who still had to pit for at least fuel in order to finish. Petty, who led for 191 laps on the day, was so strong he enjoyed a 15-second lead on second place Martin late in the race, but everybody knew Petty had to stop for fuel. Finally, with 21 laps to go, Petty made the left-hand turn down pit road, reluctantly giving up the lead and had to settle for a third-place finish. Mark Martin goes on for the win, his 4th of the season, and in the process, cut Jeff Gordon's points lead to 105 with 6 races to go. Gordon finished 7th, by the way. Meanwhile, Martin picked up an extra $114,000 from Unocal by winning from the pole, his first win ever in 23 starts at Dover Downs.
Well, this place owed us one, but, you know, I feel for Kyle Petty. I've lost a lot of races to fuel mileage. Jack Roush vowed that he'd win us a race on fuel mileage this year, and he did it. We had an awesome car today, had everybody covered but Kyle, and he had us covered easy. But we had the mileage. Jack took care of him.
We thank Phil Wurz for the Dover report. You saw the protest, I guess we'll call it, at the opening of Victory Lane at the conclusion of Saturday's MBNA 200 by a couple of members of the Buckshot Jones racing team. Each have been fined $500 by NASCAR on Wednesday. Eddie Pearson and George Jones of that team will have to cough up the $500 before the event at Charlotte 1 week from Saturday. Steve Park will be subbing for Robbie Gordon in the Coors Light Chevy for Sabco Racing at Martinsville this coming weekend. Robbie Gordon asked for the weekend off from team owner Felix Sabates to have a ride in the kart race at the California Speedway over the coming weekend. He is searching for a 1998 ride still. Park will attempt his second NASCAR Winston Cup Series start. He ran the Watkins Glen race earlier this summer in a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated Chevrolet. And on Wednesday, NASCAR gave the Chevy Monte Carlo Winston Cup teams another quarter-inch of rear spoiler. You have heard, no doubt, over the last 2 weeks after the New Hampshire and Dover races, lots of comments by some of the Chevy drivers and owners that they needed some help to keep up with the Fords. Well, they got it on Wednesday. That quarter-inch more rear spoiler will go into effect with the race at Charlotte that comes up on 1 week from Sunday. Now to the Napa leaderboard in the NASCAR Winston Cup Championship standings after the race at Dover. Mark Martin's win there, trimming 34 points from Jeff Gordon's lead. What was 129 between the two, now 105 with 6 races to go. That 105 points, the difference between Martin winning and Gordon finishing 31st in one race. Gordon has won the last 2 Martinsville events. Mark finished 3rd at Martinsville in the event of April this year. Dale Jarrett shaved 4 points from his deficit to Gordon. He's 184 points back in 3rd. Jarrett's finished worse than 6th only once in the last 9 races. Jeff Burton went the distance at Dover despite still suffering from the inner ear equilibrium problem. He moved from last starting spot to 11th at the finish, hung on to 4th place in the standings, 353 points behind Jeff Gordon. 41st and 37th place. Those are the last 2 finishes for Terry Labonte this year. He has dropped 554 points behind leader Jeff Gordon, leaving him now only 11 points ahead of Dale Earnhardt, who's had top 10 runs in the last 2 races, including his Dover runner-up finish. 7th place, Bobby Labonte is 123 points behind Earnhardt. 8th place, Bill Elliott, 139 behind Bobby. Bobby finished 8th at Martinsville in April. Elliott, top 10 finishes in 7 of the last 10 races for him. 9th place is Ted Musgrave again this week, though he's on a pretty rough streak the last few events, having finished better than 15th only once in the last 5 races. And the seesaw race for 10th goes back to Ricky Rudd this week, 25 points behind Musgrave and 11 points ahead of now 11th place driver Jeremy Mayfield. So that is the way things stand now as we get ready to go to Martinsville with the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. When we come back, we will talk about Dover, Martinsville, and a couple of other things making news with the driver of the Circuit City Ford, who will join us live in our Charlotte studios, Hut Stricklin, next on This Week in NASCAR.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you by Royal Oak Charcoal. Good times in every big red bag. Chevrolet, the cars more champions trust. Napa Auto Parts. At Napa, we keep America running. And by Slim Jim. When you need a little excitement, snap into a beefy, spicy Slim Jim.
Celebrities who actually use the product. Team Monte Carlo. Chevrolet, the cars more champions trust.
Hi, I'm Dick Trickle. You want to win $100,000? Enter Napa's Win with the Winner sweepstakes. Just go to the Napa Auto Parts store and guess the winner of the Napa 500. A little tip, it's going to be me. If you want to choose some other hot dog, you can still win a trip to the race. Plus almost 2 million prizes and special offers. So go to Napa and enter. That'll work. And remember, November 16th could be a really big day. I think we get champagne.
This is NASCAR 98. I'm in a groove with new scuffs. Talk fast.
And who's the best driver?
Wins Gordon. Consistency, Labonte. Cups, Earnhardt. All-time, the king, Richard the 43rd.
What's the toughest track?
Bristol's a blender. Gonna hang roughs at the Glen, but Darlington's too tough to tame.
Are fans that loyal to their driver's sponsor?
Nate.
What?
1-888 My House. I'm bumping and grinding on my way to see the Hat Man. NASCAR 98, the ultimate judge. EA Sports. It's in the game.
He's making headlines with a new crew chief, new manufacturer, and recent notable pickup in performance. Now joining us, driver of the Circuit City Ford for Stavola Brothers Racing, Hut Stricklin. How you doing?
Good.
Glad to have you here.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Appreciate your coming by. Let's, before we get to some of those headlines I was just discussing a minute ago, talk about Dover this past weekend and kind of get you to take me back through the Dover race a little bit. So many guys had handling problems on Sunday and just could not keep to the bottom of that racetrack. How come?
Well, I think a lot of it's got to do with the surface at Dover. It's such a fine line there of grip and no grip. I mean, it really doesn't take a whole lot. You know, you see guys like Kyle Petty, for instance, it really hits, you know, dead on it. And it just looks like a guy's, you know, on a string. And, you know, you see that from time to time with that type of surface.
Yeah, and Kyle was gone on Sunday.
Yep.
Only one caution flag in a Dover race?
That was unusual. I'm telling you, that never happens. But
why did it not happen? Why did it happen that way Sunday?
I don't know. I tell you, you know, I think what happens a lot of times, in a lot of cases, you know, when people, you know, like after a bush race, for instance, when you see a lot of wrecks, you know, for instance, like what happened Saturday, Saturday's race, all the Cup drivers get up there on top of the trucks and watch that, and they say, well, man, this place is going to be slick. You got to give and take an awful lot. And I think that's what happens, you know, for the Sunday's race, because, you know, you really didn't see a whole lot of, I guess, side by side or whatever. It was a lot of give and take, and it was just a. I mean, you've seen a few guys get out of shape, but you know, like I said, no cautions.
How did that one caution affect your race? Because it affected a lot of guys' races, the timing of that one caution.
Well, you know, when, like we were off a little bit with the chassis, and we needed to get in there and put a spring rubber in and take one out, and we just never could get the caution to do that. So we just kind of had to take it, you know, the hand we was dealt and run with it. But we had some fuel problems all day. We never could, you know, we could run, we're supposed to be able to run about 95 laps in the beginning, and we was going to stop on lap 90 to be safe, and we run out the first time. Then so Bill Engel, my new crew chief, said, well, okay, I'm going to stop 5 laps short next time. Well, he was going to stop 5 laps short, and we run out again. So he said, well, okay, the next time we're going to stop 10 laps short. So and we still run out again. So anyway, our fuel mileage got worse and worse all day, and we had something going wrong with the carburetor. I'm really not for sure, but it's just one of them things. I mean, you know, we kind of went back and looked at the thing. We felt like we had a top 10 car. You know, had we not lost about 4 laps there due to running out of fuel. So, you know, we have to look at that and, you know, say, well, we were still okay regardless. So.
Yeah. Let's look at some of Kyle Petty's cars. He runs around the Monster Mile on Sunday, and he is able to hook the bottom right there like nobody else except maybe Mark Martin could all day. Was that just strictly a matter of him hitting that setup like you were talking a while ago, or, you know, I guess what I'm thinking of is weather conditions were pretty drastically different on Sunday than they were on Friday and Saturday, and wondering how much of a factor that really was in him being so much better than everybody else was.
Well, you know, I think the weather was some of it, but I watched his car on Saturday, and I'm gonna tell you, his car looked just like it did a few years ago at Rockingham when he had everybody so covered there. Kyle drives the racetrack at Dover a little different than a lot of drivers. A lot of drivers, me included, you know, really drives the car real deep into the corners. Kyle, you know, looking at him, he don't seem like he drives the car that deep into the corner, but he gets the thing turned really early. So therefore, it's like his entry speed is slower, but his exit speed is faster. So I mean, it just, you know, plus he's really had his setup dialed in for his style of driving, and it just, I mean, it just totally wears out the whole field.
I guess he did. Of course, Kyle ended up losing the race, having to come down pit road with, what, 21 laps to go, lap 379, and make this splash and go. And we were kind of kicking around at the time whether he could do this and come back on the racetrack and have any kind of shot at Mark. But he ended up going from a half a lap in front of Mark to a half a lap behind. Was all of that pit road speed?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was. I'm gonna tell you, he's got probably the best gas man in the whole thing, in the whole garage. Grumpy, just to me, is probably one of the best, if not the best guy out there at gassing the car. And you know, I know Grumpy did his job, and I know Kyle did his job. And so I guess probably, you know, I mean, like the pit road speed deal. I mean, 35 miles an hour, man. I mean, we're you know, when we turn down pit road, it just, the thing won't hardly idle in first gear, 35 miles an hour. So that's awful slow, you know. But you know, I understand NASCAR's point of view, what they got to do, and what we got to do is try to slow the thing down and make it safer and stuff. But man, it sure is slow.
And Mark Martin ended up going to victory lane in the race on Sunday and scoring the win in the MBNA 400, as we showed you some highlights from that earlier. Hut Stricklin is with us, driver of the Circuit City Ford. We'll come back and talk about some of the headlines his team has been making in a little while, and then take your phone calls as well on the Napa Race Line at 1-800-266-9531. It's toll free. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. This Week in NASCAR from Charlotte, coming back after a look at the NASCAR Winston Cup Championship standings for drivers outside the top 10. Welcome back to This Week in NASCAR from Charlotte with Hut Stricklin, driver of the Circuit City Ford. Mentioned before the break several changes that have happened with you and your team, and a noticeable improvement in performance of late. Let's see, in the last 4 races you've qualified in the first round, 2 of those in the top 10. You got your first top 10 finish of the season a couple of weeks ago. Anything specific attributed to the boost in performance?
Well, it's a lot of things, Alan. You know, we've of course, I guess here, what, about 4 weeks ago, we had a new crew chief come on board with us, Bill Engel. That was a big change for us. Bill kind of gave us a lot of direction that our team needed. I needed it, the team needed it. And also we've made another change within our engine department. You know, we started the season building our own engines, and Ernie Elliott started building them here about a month or so ago, and you know, it seemed like that's helped our performance too. And it's just been a lot of things. It really hasn't been one thing, but it's been a combination of several little things that's really helped turn our team around.
Let's pick a couple of those apart. You mentioned Bill brought direction. How specifically does that help your team? What kind of direction?
Well, it seemed like to me, you know, our team, we got a lot of great guys, first of all, but they needed somebody to I guess, so to speak, is to grab the bull by the horns and say, okay, this is the way we're going to go. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what we needed. And it seems that, you know, Bill, you know, was taking the responsibility and, you know, saying, you know, this is what we're going to do, and it really helped me out a lot. I mean, it was a deal, you know, where I was having to somewhat put in my input as far as what we're going to do next and everything, and you know, and Bill don't want that, and that's good because it's made it easier for me. It's like, you know, he wants me to drive the race car and tell him what to do or what the car's doing, and he can fix it. And it seemed like that's been working great. Like I said, it's been good for me because I've been able to get out of the race car and walk away from it, and you know, go drink me a Coke or whatever, and you know, and just totally relax.
Get a little time to free your mind up and think about your driving instead of being absorbed in shock absorbers and stuff like that. Tell me about New Hampshire. I mentioned you got your first top 10 run of the season a few weeks ago at New Hampshire. What did that do for you and for the team to get a good run like that? It
helped us out tremendously. I mean, it showed us that we was on the right track, the road to recovery, so to speak, because I'm telling you what, the way we were going, it was going pretty bad. But you know, it's you know, we knew that we could do it and everything, so now we just got to build on that. And like I said, when we went to Dover, we felt like we was as good or better at Dover than we were at New Hampshire. And you know, we feel like, you know, some of these upcoming races, we really don't see a bad one for us coming up. So you know, we've got some new cars being built right now and everything. So you know, I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. I really am.
Hut Stricklin with us, driver of the Circuit City Ford for Stavola Brothers Racing. Coming back in just a couple of minutes on This Week in NASCAR. On the way to the break, we look at the NASCAR Busch Series Championship standings. After the MBNA 200 at Dover, we showed you highlights of earlier. Randy LaJoie finished 2nd, Todd Bodine 15th. Randy's lead grows to 231 points. Busch Series off this weekend. They race at Charlotte 1 week from Saturday. You are looking at a Chevrolet Monte Carlo, that one in particular, belonging to the Darrell Waltrip Motorsports team on Tuesday of this week. Hut Stricklin's team, this Stavola Brothers operation, announcing that they are going to have some Chevy Monte Carlo skin on their Circuit City cars for next season. We come back to our Charlotte studio with Hut to talk about that decision. Why?
Well, we felt like, you know, our team, in order to make the next step, we felt like that was the next step for us to take. We needed, I guess, some type of factory help to help our program. You know, we needed wind tunnel time, which we could get all that from Ford, but we'd have to pay for it. And there's only, you know, a limited number of teams that's really getting full factory support in Ford, where the Chevrolet people have told us, you know, and assured us that they're going to help us, you know, a lot more and a lot of other ways besides dollars. So, you know, and that's what we need to feel like, you know, to help our program build it better.
Did it make it easier to make that decision knowing that you were going to have to take all your Thunderbirds apart anyway at the end of this season to make them into Tauruses?
Yep, without a doubt. I mean, between that, you know, we've got to build a new car, and also our engine program. You know, we didn't have an engine program, so it was obviously it made it easier for us to change. You know, we didn't have to like scrap a bunch of stuff. So, you know, yeah, I mean there was a couple of things that went into that. So plus, you know, we feel like the Chevrolet deal. You know, they've already got a car that's run, you know, a few years. They've got it worked out, and plus Bill Engel has worked on those. You know, and got a pretty good handle on that too. So it's a lot of things that went into our decision on that, but. Man, we're really excited about being a part of that too.
Toughest thing for you to learn about what the new bodied car wants? I mean, you know what to do with the front fenders, you know what to do with this and that on the Thunderbird right now. What's the thing you're figuring you'll have to fool with the most to get used to on the new car?
Probably the biggest thing I see is running the racetracks like Charlotte, you know, the mile and a half like Atlanta, like that. The racetracks is really fast. You know certain areas that you got to watch out for on the Thunderbird, certain positions that you cannot let yourself get into to keep the car from turning around sideways, passing somebody or whatever.
Okay, in relation to other cars on the track you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And the Monte Carlo, you know, I've talked to a few guys about it, and they tell me, well, no, it don't do nothing like that. You know, like the Ford does, or it does something else at a different place on the racetrack. So yeah. I think that's going to be probably one big thing that I'm going to have to adjust, you know, as far as from the driver's standpoint. The rest of it, I think, is going to be pretty basic. I mean, it's, you know, you still have, you know, we're still going to have to play with the fenders, and we're still going to have to, you know, cut the body up here and there, you know, to tweak on it here and there all over. But you know, I mean, we're going to have to do that regardless of whichever way we go.
It's very interesting, though, what you say about being in traffic. That wasn't even an area I expected you to get into when I asked that question. Hut Stricklin with us, driver of the Circuit City Ford for this year, Chevy for next year. Up next, your calls on the Napa Race Line at 1-800-266-9531. Coming back after a look at the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Championship standings. They race in Martinsville on Saturday afternoon. Jack Sprague goes into the event leading Rich Bickle by 95 points.
This is NASCAR 98, talking Rusty Wallace, Sterling Marlin.
9-4.
What do you think?
Come on, these guys aren't athletes.
Not athletes. These guys bench press 3,400 pounds. They wear fire suits instead of shoulder pads. So, Mr. Baby on board, next time you redline your minivan at 55, if someone wins and everyone else loses, it's a sport. Any real questions, call 1-888-MY-HOUSE, because I'm dancing with 700 horses down Victory Lane. NASCAR 98, the ultimate judge. EA Sports. It's in the game.
Back in our Charlotte studios on This Week in NASCAR with Hut Stricklin, driver of the Circuit City Ford for Stavola Brothers Racing. All right, got Martinsville up this weekend, practice and qualifying starting on Friday. You qualified 6th, finished 14th on the lead lap in April. Tell me about your race that day.
A pretty good race for us. We had, stayed at the top 10 all day long. We had a camshaft or something wore out, I think, about the last 100 miles of the race. The thing was spitting and sputtering all day, but our last 100 laps. But it was a good day for us. It really was. Martinsville is probably one of my favorite racetracks on the whole circuit. If there ever is a Winston Cup racetrack that reminds me of the racetrack in Birmingham
that you grew up racing on.
That I grew up racing on is Martinsville. It's flat, just like Martinsville. It didn't have concrete corners like Martinsville does, but it's flat like that. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Birmingham, I think, has even less banking than Martinsville does.
Yeah, I think it's banked the other way.
Yeah. 11 cautions for 99 laps in the April race. Do we expect a kind of a rugged race this Sunday?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's typical Martinsville. I mean, it's just, it's close racing. A lot of pushing and shoving. I mean, it happens. I mean, you got cars that weigh 3,400 pounds. They don't stop. They don't get going good. I mean, it's, even the best one don't react like it needs to, but it's, a great race to watch, I'll tell you.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you had to give me, as my last question, a piece of advice for the rookie driver we're going to bring into this seat next, tell him what he needs to know for Sunday's race to go 500 laps at Martinsville, what would it be?
Gosh, I don't need to tell him anything the way he ran the race.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Now the biggest thing, I feel like it, I've always had to teach myself there, is the brake pedal. Just stay off the brake pedal as much as you can. It seems like anybody who's running at the end of 500 miles or 500 laps there, if you got a full brake pedal, you're going to be in good shape to win the race. I'm telling you, because the place is tough.
Hut, thanks for coming by. Sure do appreciate it. Good luck on Sunday. Here's our
Alan.
Chase Authentics This Week in NASCAR shirt. And
thanks, great.
Don't even go with the bozo comments this time.
I'm keeping my comments to myself.
There you go. Thanks again for being here. We appreciate it. Hut Stricklin, driver of the Circuit City Ford on This Week in NASCAR. We appreciate him joining us tonight. Up next, the aforementioned young driver who goes after his second NASCAR Winston Cup Series start on Sunday in the Haynes 500, Kenny Irwin. When we come back to Charlotte, stay with us. He's got 2 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series wins in a stellar 1997 season and goes to Martinsville this weekend looking for his second NASCAR Winston Cup start. Now joining me, driver of the Ray Bestis Ford, Kenny Irwin. How are you?
Doing good.
Appreciate you taking a couple minutes to come by. Let's talk about Richmond. What a great weekend for you. You qualified second, finished 8th. How did that compare to what you wanted to accomplish that weekend?
Well, I went into the weekend just hoping to make the show. Obviously, we wanted to do better than just get in the show, but when we qualified second, I was totally elated. That was better than anything I would have thought that we could go in there and do. And then just that we got to run the whole race. That's really, that's easy to, you go there saying that's all you want to do, but that's really all I wanted to do was just be competitive and just run the whole race.
Rate your performance for me in the car. You obviously have thought about it a lot since then. How did you do? I
want Robert Yates to rate me and everybody else. My deal was just to go there and to run the race, and hopefully Robert thinks that we did okay, and we're just building for next year and trying to get me time, and that's what I'm doing.
Was there a part in the race, the beginning of the race, where you were at all intimidated, concerned, or did that go away before the green flag ever dropped?
I think that went away right after qualifying.
Okay.
I was very nervous, very whatever, jitters, bugs. I had everything. When I walked out off the truck and got in the car for qualifying, I was pretty nervous, and then I got a lesson in happy hour. Rusty gave me a little lesson, and But that was good. I mean, I needed everything, so I mean, I'm ready to go to the next race. Hopefully, Martinsville. I mean, it's hard to say it could go that good, but you know, I just go in there looking to make the show and run. To say run 500 laps, that'd be hard to do.
The aftermath of the performance, your first NASCAR Winston Cup start with all the buildup of the high-profile ride for next year. Now you go out and you run in the top 10 in your first race. Did that relieve or add to whatever pressure you might have been feeling at the time?
Oh, I think it relieved pressure. I think it relieved a lot of pressure for Robert Yates. Hopefully it did, for his decision to go with a rookie driver. I think he probably had more pressure on him than what I had on me, or that's how I felt. I really probably tried to relieve pressure off him more than I was trying to do it for myself. To everybody maybe give him a break, and I think maybe that wasn't such a bad decision.
There you go. Kenny Irwin with us, driver of the Ray Bestis Ford on the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and goes in the winner's circle Ford this weekend to Martinsville to try and qualify for his second NASCAR Winston Cup start. Your calls and questions on the Napa Race Line for Kenny in a little bit at 1-800-266-9531. On the way to the break, we take a look at NASCAR Touring Series winners from last weekend, including David Hutto back in Victory Lane in the NASCAR Goodies Dash Series, and Steve Boley, who won in the Busch All-Star Tour on the dirt out in West Liberty, Iowa. The calendar this weekend, it's Crawford County, Iowa for that same Busch All-Star Tour Saturday, plus the truck race in Martinsville, Virginia. Sunday, the 28th Winchester 400 for the NASCAR Slim Jim All-Pro Series up in Indiana. The 18th Fall Final for the NASCAR Featherlight Modified Tour in Stafford, Connecticut, plus Southwest Tour Racing in Tracy, California, all on top of the Haynes 500 for the NASCAR Winston Cup Series.
This Week in NASCAR is brought to you in part by Berryman Products, makers of the complete line of B12 Chem Tool cleaners and fuel conditioners for your car. And by Royal Oak Charcoal. Good times in every Big Red.
On This Week in NASCAR with Kenny Irwin, driver of the Ray Bestis Ford on the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, locked in a pretty tight fight for the Cintas Rookie of the Year championship in that division. Let's talk some truck racing. You came out in your first and what will be your only full season with the trucks and scored 2 wins fairly early on. Surprised?
Very surprised, especially we won the 3rd race in it down at Miami. I mean, I knew that the truck team was good. I didn't think that I really could go out there and win the race that quick. And then we got to do some testing at Texas. I thought we'd be pretty good there. I didn't really think we could go there and win, especially after all the Winston Cup. I heard about Texas. I was pretty concerned. But I mean, we just had we have a very strong team. And we've kind of gone through, you know, some peaks and valleys, but I think we're heading back up to the peaks. So,
tell me about the Miami race. Tell me about the story of that day, what it took to win that race. It was actually pretty spectacular from what I understand.
I mean, it was just, there's some races that are just fun to be in, and this was one of them. I mean, even if I wouldn't have won, it was just a fun race to be a part of. And
looking at it here,
I never felt like that I was going to win the race. I really didn't. I mean, every time that I didn't lead but probably 10, 15 laps of the whole race, but we were always around there, and it's like they say, you got to be there at the end to win. And I was totally exhausted after that race. That was the longest, up to that point, the longest race I'd ever been in, and I was done. If I would have finished second, I probably would have stayed in the truck for an hour just because I just wanted to sit there.
Texas, same story. Tell me about the race. You pretty much had a strong truck that night.
I felt the whole race. I felt like that the only person that I had to beat was Mike Bliss, and I mean, I felt like that me and him had the 2 best trucks there, and then he had a problem, and I just felt like that we had the best truck, the best team, the whole deal right then.
And pulled away for a very awesome win. You are locked in a pretty tight fight for the Rookie of the Year championship with Rick Crawford and Stacy Compton.
Yeah.
Do you race with one eye on them over the final 6 events of the season?
I haven't thought too much about it yet. I mean, the last couple weeks I've thought more about it. Everybody said, you know, the season's winding down. So I'm sure, you know, this weekend I'll think about where they're qualified, and definitely at the end of the race I'll wonder where they're at.
You came from a background in open wheel racing, the Silver Crown cars, the sprints, the midgets. What about driving that type of race cars do you feel like has prepared you the most for what you're doing now? Is there something about what it takes to drive those race cars, that skill that you just keep coming back to?
I don't think there's one thing that you keep coming back to. It's just everything you've learned running the 70, 80 races you run a year over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, and it's your subconscious. Maybe, you know, you don't think about every time you do a move or whatever. It just it naturally comes back to you, and I feel like that being the sprint cars and midgets, going back and forth and running them all the time has helped make you kind of more of a diverse driver.
Let's talk about diversity here. Let's talk about your schedule for the last couple of weeks since Richmond. Okay, you did the truck race and the Winston Cup race in Richmond. Then you took off and went open wheel racing somewhere, right?
I went and run Gateway, the new racetrack in St. Louis, and actually I have a ball going back now and running the open wheel stuff, the midgets, and run good. We in fact I thought we were going to win the race. We started kind of in the back, and we come up, and
this is not Gateway, by the way.
Right. Never this sideways. And we just we ended up 4th, which you know, Johnny Vance, that's who I run for, and I think he was happy, and I was happy. I just like going back and doing it.
Yeah. And that was after testing at Martinsville between Richmond and Gateway, and now you're back here in Charlotte this week getting ready to go to Martinsville.
Yeah. And actually, I didn't know if we were going to get to go run that race. Robert Yates told me if we didn't get so fast that I had to stay there and test all weekend. So we got going fast, and so I was able to go and run that race.
Well, let me pick your brain about that, Robert, and open wheel racing. I mean, you have signed up with him for next year. What's he said to you about some of these types of races that I mean, you're the kind of guy that'll go run anywhere and anything, kind of a Schrader type. I read you as.
Well, we haven't talked about it.
Okay.
Maybe this will help to bring it up. I don't know. I'm not interested in running. I mean, maybe a couple races, but I mean, I want to focus totally on Winston Cup, and that's where I want to be, and I'm going to do anything I can to make that work. I would probably like to run maybe a few, 2. Actually, 2 is what I thought about running next year. If anybody has a problem with that, then I probably won't do it. But
yeah. What about other types of racing? I mean, Busch Series stuff, Truck Series stuff. Have you kicked around any of that kind of thing for experience purposes on some tracks that you maybe haven't run at yet in a truck?
And I have thought about that. And the Busch Series would be a nice deal to do that with. We haven't
gotten that far.
Really, we haven't. Me and Robert have talked about maybe if I want to do it, or if he wants me to do it. But we haven't said yes that I can go out and get a deal or look for a deal or something like that.
Still to be kicked around.
Still to be kicked around.
There you go. Kenny Irwin with us, driver of the Ray Bestis Ford in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and the 98 driver of the Texaco Havoline Ford. Your calls and questions on the Napa Race Line shortly at 1-800-266-9531. This Week in NASCAR from Charlotte, and we're coming right back.
Guests on This Week in NASCAR receive embroidered Chase Authentic attire. Chase Authentics, the choice of champions, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR. Enter to win the Chase Authentics Fan Fantasy Sweepstakes. Win a trip for 2 to one of NASCAR's biggest races of 1998. Entry forms and complete rules in the men's department of participating Sears stores.
Back with Kenny Irwin on This Week in NASCAR from our Charlotte studios. The 98 driver of the Texaco Havoline Ford trying to clinch the Cintas Rookie of the Year championship this season on the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in the Ray Bestis Ford. Want to talk to you a little bit about the process of getting the Robert Yates ride. When it was announced at Indianapolis, you kind of made a little fun of how, well, basically I was the one that called Robert the most, but I want to actually, you know, kind of seriously for a minute, were you the aggressor in that? And if that's even something you're comfortable answering, but were you the aggressor there?
I mean, that's very true. I mean, everything I said that day, I mean, that's exactly how it happened. I had heard that Ernie, there was a possibility that he might not be coming back, and so I at least wanted to put my name in that I was interested, if he even knew who I was, and so I mean, it really did. It took a while that I could actually get him on the phone and talk to him, and that's just kind of how I went about it. And
all of this came about 1 year from the point that you really got a pretty big career break, and I'm talking about the Richmond truck race in September of '96, where you showed up still basically being a regular on the open wheel circuit and qualified on the pole and finished 5th in the race. Did you get a lot of notice from that race? Do I make more out of that than that race was?
Yeah, I mean, really, people, I mean, I really didn't have, after that race, I mean, Ford was interested in doing something, but if it wouldn't have been for Jim Herrick, I mean, he's the one that really gave me a big break in
the owner of the Ray Bestis truck.
The 98 truck, and asked me if I was interested in doing it, and I mean, I jumped at the chance to go and race for him. And but outside of that, I mean, he felt like there was a lot of potential there. I don't think, I mean, and Ford obviously did, because they got it behind it, but I mean, Ford alone couldn't have done it. I mean, it took somebody like Jim Herrick to make the deal happen.
Your expectations for next season. Everybody else has expectations for next season. What are your expectations? If I were to bring you back here a year from November and sit you down and say, was it a good year?
I honestly have not put that, I mean, I think about it in lower terms than what I think a lot of, even the 2018. I watch these races and I see how hard it is to make the races. And I think that that's a chore in itself. You have so many cars, good teams trying to make races, and you see good teams going home. And I mean, I don't think that Robert Yates teams are going to go home. And I hope next year they're not going home. And just to be competitive. The guys in the 2018 think that we can win a race next year. I just want to be competitive, and every week that, you know, we're just getting a little better, and that we're at the end of the year that maybe we can win a race.
With Kenny Irwin, the 98 driver, the Texaco Havoline Ford, going to come back and talk about the weekend's Martinsville event in just a moment on This Week in NASCAR. Jeff Bodine had a spin and win at Martinsville. We flash back to 1990.
I was just trying to get under Terry Labonte, and he was a lap car, and I probably shouldn't have stuck my nose down in there. We bumped, and I ended up spinning around in the infield. I was just fortunate it didn't hurt the car. It did tow the wheels out a little bit, but actually made it drive better. And so that might have helped us win the race, really, because the car didn't run better after that.
Doggone, we hung in there and the car run good, and even after getting in that wreck, I really had my doubts, but the thing just come through for us, and I'm just tickled to death.
Almost like a demolition derby out there at times.
Oh gosh, it was just cars, you know, wrecking and blowing up, and when Bobby blew up, he really oiled the track down, and I spun out in that, and it's just been a long day. I'm really tired.
Little Darrell Waltrip Silver Anniversary flashback as we come back on This Week in NASCAR to talk about this weekend's Haynes 500 with Kenny Irwin, who will drive the Winner's Circle Ford in this weekend's races. Or is there another name on it? You've got like different names on the cars for all the races you're going to run this year, right?
Yeah, this weekend is still the Tonka truck, Hasbro Tonka truck, and I think the next race is Nerf for the G.I. Joe car. So. Yeah.
You tested at Martinsville recently to try and get the feel for the place. Tough old racetrack, isn't it?
Very tough old racetrack. I mean, I thought, you know, it's a half-mile flat racetrack. That's everything we'd run in the open wheel stuff. You know, it won't be that bad. And I mean, it's got a curb there that'll send you for a loop pretty quick.
Little curb down at the inside of each of those corners. Very fast straightaways. You heard Hut Stricklin talking about keeping that brake pedal underneath you. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that. How do you approach the race this weekend? I mean, what was the most difficult thing for you to get a feel for in testing, and And what do you think the challenge is?
Just like he said, the brakes. We run several hundred laps there and tried to figure out if the brakes were going to hold up. I mean, we did all right, but it wasn't race conditions either.
Yeah.
I mean, we took brakes, and so it's going to be. I mean, the guys said the brakes, just like everybody says, the brakes are the biggest deal, and if you can have them, then we'll be able to run the whole race.
When you tested, you had a little racing partner there. I understand Joe Ruppman was there and tried to give you a little feel for what it was like. Was that much of a help?
It was a big help. Jimmy Hensley was also there, and I got to, luckily Jimmy was actually practicing there, and he did a lot, but me and Joe, we actually got out there, run back and forth, and I mean, and he doesn't take it easy. When we've gone and tested before, he doesn't take it easy. I mean, it's just like, I mean, he's got just as good a car as I do, and we're bumping and figuring out how to, really just trying to figure out how to race around that track, and it's been very good for me.
Kenny, I want to thank you for taking the time to come by tonight. Wish you the best of luck Saturday and Sunday in the Haynes 250 and 500. Make the race and get all 500 laps in.
That's exactly it. Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you. We have our Chase Authentics This Week in NASCAR shirt before I forget it for you. I appreciate your coming by, and again, good luck this weekend. Need to take just a minute to tell you about next week's show. Because qualifying at Charlotte is Wednesday night when we normally do this program, we are going to tape the show Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Your phone calls are welcome then, 10 Eastern Time, next Wednesday, October 1st. This Week in NASCAR goes to tape at that point. And, of course, check your local listings for when you'll see it in your area. And one other quick note about tonight's program. We had a little problem with the phone system, as you could tell. We never did open the Napa race line. We apologize. They're already working on it. We'll have it fixed for next week. You can count on that. Thank Kenny Irwin for joining me. Thank Hut Stricklin for being here as well. And as always, we thank you for watching. Don't forget, we tape at 10 a.m. Eastern Time next Wednesday. Check your local listings for when you'll see it. And that is about a wrap on This Week in NASCAR. The Haynes 250 Saturday in Martinsville for the trucks. The Haynes 500 Sunday for the Winston Cup Series. We talk about it all next week on This Week in NASCAR. See you then.
This Week in NASCAR has been brought to you by Royal Oak Charcoal. Good times in every big red bag. Chevrolet. The cars more champions trust. Napa Auto Parts. At Napa, we keep America running. And by Slim Jim. When you need a little excitement, snap into a beefy, spicy Slim Jim.